I was a man completely broken by marriage, yet in the worst written script of my life, I managed to pull off a total reversal. Even my friends never expected that someone like me, who spent every night on the sofa after the wedding, would dare to use her obsession to set a trap. I even went as far as resurrecting the first love she had been obsessed with for years as my own secret persona. I didn't do any of this for the thrill of revenge, but rather as the only way to escape this twisted relationship. If I didn't force her to sign those divorce papers with her own hands, the genuine love between me and my sister-in-law would forever be labeled as an affair. In this world, no one defends a man who looks like he cheated first, so I had to use her own choices to clear the path for my future happiness. We had been married for 6 months, yet my wife wouldn't even let me touch her. That night, I was huddled alone in a bar in downtown Chicago, drowning my sorrows in drink. It wasn't until her sister sat down beside me and casually mentioned the one person she could never forget. The neon lights in the downtown bar were blinding, and the room was thick with the smell of alcohol and regret. Hannah sat down next to me, her long hair brushing against my arm like silk, making me shiver involuntarily. "Davis, you don't look so good," Hannah said in a low voice, her tone filled with genuine concern. "Please stop drinking, okay?" I pretended not to hear her and signaled the bartender for another neat whiskey. I downed it in one gulp, the burn in my throat becoming the only numbness I could hold on to. "Hannah, tell me the truth," I muttered, the bitterness rising in my chest. "Am I just a total loser? We've been married for 6 months, and I haven't even truly held my wife's hand once." Hannah's body stiffened visibly, and she remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. "Davis, have you ever thought that maybe she has a reason for acting that way?" I turned to stare at her, seeing the struggle in her eyes, and a sudden, uncontrollable urge seized me. "What do you know? Tell me." She bit her lower lip, her gaze shifting uncertainly. "Davis, you know how it is. Back in high school in Seattle, my sister was head over heels for this guy. His name was Mason, and they were practically inseparable back then. Later, Mason went to London for college, and since then, my sister has never truly let him go. It felt like someone had flipped a switch in my brain, and scattered images suddenly clicked together. All those cold stares, the nonsensical excuses, and the way she deliberately avoided being alone with me finally made sense. She had given her heart away to someone else long before I ever showed up. She belonged to another man. She's probably been waiting for him all this time." Hannah's voice was barely a whisper, yet it hit me like a sledgehammer. "That's why she won't let you get close to her." I downed another glass, the whiskey churning in my stomach, but that discomfort was nothing compared to the searing pain in my chest. I remembered our wedding day in San Francisco. Isabella wore a white dress like a pure angel, but her eyes were always drifting toward the distance, as if she were watching the ceremony from thousands of miles away. Back then, I lied to myself, thinking she was just reserved or shy. Now I realized that her heart wasn't at that wedding at all. She had never once focused her feelings on me. I have no memory of how I got home that night. I only remember that Hannah never left my side. Her arms supported me, and her voice was soft in my ear, soothing a beast that was ready to explode. When I woke up the next morning, my head felt like it was splitting open, but every word Hannah said was crystal clear. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the empty bedroom. Isabella had already left for work, and the apartment was terrifyingly quiet, cold as always. Driven by some strange impulse, I walked over to her desk and opened her laptop. I typed in her birthday as the password without much hope, but to my surprise, it unlocked instantly. In an encrypted folder, I found what I was looking for. There were dozens of photos of a handsome, sunny man whose smile looked like it could light up the world. The timestamps were from years ago, all from their high school days in Seattle. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. I opened her iMessage, and the name pinned at the very top of the list was Mason. Those 5 letters felt like a branding iron against my eyes. I clicked on his profile and followed the link to his Instagram, scrolling through photo after photo of his life in London. I saw the beautiful scenery and his face, always wearing that big grin. Then I started reading their chat logs. Every message felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Isabella asked him how the weather was in London, if it was too cold, and if he was eating on time. Her words were filled with a suffocating level of concern. That tenderness was something she had never once shown me. But what truly shattered me was a message she sent to Mason. Marrying Davis was just to satisfy my parents. I have no feelings for him at all, and I will never sleep with him. I froze in the chair, motionless as a stone statue for God knows how long. The morning sun streamed through the window, and though it was warm, it couldn't melt the layer of ice forming in my veins. For the past 6 months, I hadn't been a husband at all. I was just a prop, a tool she used to keep her parents happy. She trapped me in this marriage while her own heart remained locked away. Her heart was tied to a shadow in another country. That night, Isabella came home very late, and I was already waiting for her on the living room sofa. I watched her walk in looking exhausted, kicking off her heels without even glancing my way as she headed for the bedroom. "Isabella," I called out, my voice cold as frost. She paused and looked back at me, her brow furrowed. "What is it?" "I want a divorce," I said, my tone so eerily calm that it even startled me. Isabella stood there stunned, a flash of surprise in her eyes. But quickly, that cold, detached expression masked her face again. "What are you talking about?" I stood up and walked toward her, looking her straight in the eye. "We're getting a divorce," I repeated slowly. "I know about you and Mason. I'm done being a joke." The color drained from her face, and she opened her mouth but couldn't make a sound. "For 6 months, I tried everything just to make you happy, just to get you to see me as a person," I said with a bitter smile. "Now I realize that feelings can't be forced. Your heart was never here, and it's not something I can win." Isabella looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "Davis, calm down first." "I am calm," I interrupted, pulling the pre-drafted divorce agreement from my suit pocket. "Here, take a look. If there are no issues, just sign it." She stared down at the papers in silence, as if time had stopped. After a long while, she finally looked up, a stubborn fire suddenly igniting in her eyes. "I'm not signing it." As soon as she said it, she turned and ran upstairs, slamming the bedroom door shut. Then came the sharp, piercing click of the lock, shutting me out of this broken life. I gripped the crumpled divorce papers, the sharp edges digging into my palm until it went numb and blood began to seep out. The sound of Isabella slamming the door echoed through the quiet apartment. That click of the lock was like a final gate dropping between us. Moonlight spilled through the blinds onto the scattered papers on the floor, looking like crushed petals. It was a cold, ironic monument to our shattered marriage. For the next week, Isabella moved through the house like a ghost. She was gone before I woke up, the soft sound of the front door closing acting as my alarm clock. She wouldn't return until the middle of the night, the rhythm of her heels on the floor reminding me of another night spent alone. Once, we bumped into each other in the entryway. She clutched her bag tightly and hurried past me with her head down, her hair brushing my hand with a touch colder than a stranger's. I instinctively reached out to stop her, but she deftly stepped aside, avoiding me with a practiced ease. This suffocating cold war lasted for 7 days. On the 7th night, I sat in the living room watching the clock tick past 1 a.m. The moment the lock turned, I stood up abruptly from the sofa. Isabella was startled, her body stiffening. Even with heavy makeup, the dark circles under her eyes were as obvious as bruises. "Isabella, we need to talk," I said, my voice sounding harsh in the silent room. She looked away and tossed her bag onto the sofa, coldly replying that there was nothing to talk about. "How long do you plan on hiding? This marriage has been a farce from the start, so what's the point in dragging it out?" Isabella let out a soft, chilling laugh, her nails digging into her palms. "Davis, do you think a divorce solves everything? My parents would just set me up on a bunch of blind dates, and the next guy might be even worse than you." "Worse than me?" If she hadn't been the one to approach me and show interest, I never would have stepped into this marriage. It turned out I was nothing more than a shield she used to block her parents' pressure. Anger made me tremble. "For 6 months, I followed you around like an idiot, trying to please you, and this is what I get." She said nothing, standing still as the moonlight traced the cold line of her jaw. Finally, she spoke. "I'll give you $20,000 a month. Once Mason comes back, I'll agree to the divorce." Her words hit me like a physical punch to the chest. My mind flashed to my parents' dilapidated house back in Ohio and the hospital bills for my mother's chemotherapy. I thought of the embarrassment I felt whenever colleagues showed off new car keys while I could only stare at my bank balance. $20,000 a month could change a lot of things. I could finally breathe without the weight of mortgages and car loans keeping me awake. But my remaining pride forced a cold laugh out of me. "You're pretty ruthless." "Fine, make it $40,000 plus a $1 million lump sum when we divorce." My voice rose, pushed by a mix of humiliation and suffocating despair. "Since I can't have your heart, I might as well leave with some compensation." Isabella's family was loaded, with their business in Chicago worth millions. I knew this was pocket change to her. She narrowed her eyes, her gaze sharp as a knife. I thought she would immediately turn her face and walk away, but she just stood there biting her lower lip, her nails scratching the leather surface of the sofa. Time stretched on, and just when I thought she would walk away, she said, "Fine." I was stunned by how quickly she agreed. Hardening my heart, I took another step forward. "One more thing. Since your heart belongs to someone else, I have the right to find my own life too. We'll live separate lives. You wait for your long-lost first love, and I'll meet new people. That's only fair." "Whatever," she replied without hesitation. She looked as if a great weight had been lifted. She turned in her bedroom, and the door closed slowly in front of me. I felt a shiver that I couldn't tell was anger or relief. The next morning, a debit card and a supplemental agreement were on the dining table. I recognized Isabella's sharp, orderly handwriting immediately. The last note she wrote was clear: funds transferred on the 1st of every month. Any breach of contract requires double compensation. I twirled the cold plastic card between my fingers as the sunlight glinted off the raised numbers. At that moment, I realized our marriage had officially become a business transaction. As I looked at the card, a secret, dark sense of pleasure began to grow in the shadows of my heart. Since the path to love was blocked, maybe filling the void with money wasn't so crazy. In a world this cynical, perhaps only cold cash could make this pathetic farce seem less tragic. The bass from a club speakers made my bones ache, and the strobe lights cut through the darkness like blades. I was tucked away in a corner booth with a row of empty glasses in front of me. No matter how much whiskey I drank, I couldn't put out the fire of resentment burning in my soul. Since signing that ridiculous deal with Isabella, every night at home was the same. I faced an empty apartment and her locked door. Every time I saw that lock, it felt like another twist of a knife. I was just a prisoner in a gilded cage, a clown who traded his dignity for a monthly salary. "Another round," I shouted at the bar, my voice hoarse. Just then, a figure moved through the crowd toward the bar. She was wearing a form-fitting red dress that showed off her smooth shoulders, her long hair swaying with every step. Even in the dim light, she was stunning. Driven by some strange impulse, I stood up and stumbled toward her. All I could think about were the terms of my contract with Isabella. If she could wait for her old flame, why couldn't I find some comfort of my own? I sat on the stool next to her and slammed my new bank card onto the bar. Driven by alcohol and a strange arrogance, I leaned in close. "You're exactly my type," I said. $10,000 a month to be my girlfriend." The words were crude and arrogant, hanging heavily in the air. My heart thundered as if I had finally exhaled a breath I'd been holding for 6 months. "Davis." The woman turned her head and raised an eyebrow. "What did you just say?" As soon as I saw her face, the alcohol evaporated from my system. Those refined features and that half-smile belonged to Hannah, my sister-in-law. Damn it, I cursed under my breath, scrambling to grab the card back from the bar. "Oh, hey, Hannah. What a coincidence. The moon looks great tonight, right? I should go. I left the stove on at home." I started babbling, desperate to escape the awkwardness. "Ha," Hannah laughed, suddenly grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't be in such a hurry to leave." A meaningful smile curled her lips as she pushed me back onto the stool. "Davis, Were you just making me an offer? 10,000 a month to be your woman? My face burned, and my brain felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Oh, I get it now. She narrowed her eyes, her gaze bright and sharp enough to see through my darkest secrets. You found out about my sister's little secret. So now you're out here looking for some revenge cheating? Trapped. I threw up my hands in surrender. Fine, yes. Your sister is waiting for her old flame. So why should I have to live like a monk? It's a transaction, so we each do our own thing. It's fair. I felt a strange surge of confidence. I wasn't the one who broke the vows first. Hannah stared at me for a long time before leaning in until her breath was warm against my ear. Well, you could always consider me. Her voice was low and seductive, the last word lingering like a hook in my shattered nerves. I jumped back, staring at her in disbelief. Are you serious? Hannah just tilted her head, her smile widening into something dangerously playful. What? Are you chicken? Besides, picking me is better than some random woman you find on the street, right? The drum beats around us were deafening, but my mind was a buzzing blank space. Looking into Hannah's eyes, which sparkled like diamonds, I couldn't tell if this was a new deal or a more dangerous trap. The air in the bar was hot and thick with the smell of whiskey. It was thick with opportunity. Hannah leaned against the bar like a flickering flame, her silver necklace flashing under the lights. It was a sharp contrast to Isabella's unchanging pearls. My Ice Queen wife was always stiff and cold like a statue, but this girl was alive, every inch of her skin glowing with a dangerous, addictive light. You said it yourself, no backing out. I heard myself say, my knuckles white as I gripped the debit card. The whiskey had made the decision for me. Hannah's eyes crinkled into crescents, and the small mole near her, I seemed to dance with her smile, as if she were branding me. Her jasmine perfume cut through the smell of smoke and booze. It ignited a desire I had suppressed for 6 months. Compared to her sister's frozen expression, Hannah's vibrant presence was exactly what I had been thirsting for. I promise, she whispered, standing on her tiptoes as her skirt brushed my leg. I thought of Isabella's conservative, knee-length skirts. I thought of the countless nights I spent alone in bed. Now this girl was actively closing the distance between us. In that moment, I caught a hint of nervousness behind her playful expression. When our lips met, her fingers gripped my shirt tightly. Her teeth accidentally grazed my lip, which only made me pull her closer. My hand cupped the back of her neck, almost pulling her into me. Alcohol and lust surged through my veins as we stumbled out of the bar and back to the apartment in the dark. The overlapping shadows on the wall were distorted and long, like a fever dream. When I opened my eyes the next morning, I saw Hannah curled up beside me, sleeping peacefully. The image was a jarring contrast to how Isabella looked in bed. Isabella always slept in a rigid position, keeping a clear distance as if there were a river between us. We hadn't actually crossed the line last night. At the final moment, a shred of reason held me back. That marriage certificate was still there. I couldn't let Hannah become the other woman, especially since she was Isabella's sister. I groaned as I moved, my whole body aching. The movement woke her up. Hannah propped herself up and rubbed her eyes, the morning light tracing the beautiful curve of her waist. Davis, you have to take responsibility for me now, she said, her voice husky from sleep. Stop it, I laughed it off. Nothing happened last night. I don't care, Hannah said, flopping back onto the pillow and pouting playfully. You started it, so you're responsible. Then her tone turned serious. I'm not in a hurry. We can be together after you divorce my sister. I can wait. Those words stunned me. Are you serious? Of course, she nodded. What do you even see in me? I asked. She smiled slightly. I'm just like you when you're a mess. I rolled my eyes. Fine, I'll take responsibility. I paused and had to ask. But I need to know. You don't have some first love hidden in your heart that you can't let go of, do you? The mere possibility made my skin crawl. The last thing I needed was another person obsessed with a ghost from the past. I thought of the photos on Isabella's computer. No, Hannah said, her eyes clear as they reflected my face. Only you. I want you to be my first and my last. Her blatant sincerity hit me like a heavy weight. It had been so long since I felt truly wanted. Over the next 6 months, Hannah and I grew closer. She had her own marketing firm in Chicago, and after finding out I had a degree from Northwestern, she pulled me into her team. During the day, we worked side by side, and I saw her command a room in 5-inch heels. At night, we'd grab tacos from food truck or go out with the team. Every meal and every drink built our connection. We even went to the beach, filling my phone with photos of us laughing in the sun. Hannah was the one who pulled me out of Isabella's shadow. I realized I couldn't keep dragging this out. The fake marriage had to end. I was determined to divorce Isabella. Then came that night of the torrential rain. I walked into the apartment to find her curled up on the sofa, looking completely empty. Empty wine bottles were scattered on the table, and a large red stain spread across the rug like an unhealed wound. "What's wrong?" I asked, stopping by her side out of instinct. "Mason, he's getting married," Isabella muttered, her voice thick with alcohol. She looked up, her makeup a mess from the tears. A burst of pure satisfaction exploded in my chest. Finally. But the celebration I wanted to shout was stifled when I saw the hollow look in her eyes. That broken expression was something I had never seen on her before. All her defenses had crumbled into ruins. Then the real trouble started. "Davis." She leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder, her hair smelling of wine. Can we start over?" Her fingertips traced the lines of my palm, a gesture so similar to Hannah's habit of drawing circles on my back. I jerked back, my back hitting the sofa arm. "Isabella, we aren't right for each other. Have you tried talking to Mason? Maybe if you tell him how you feel, he'll come back." I knew it was a jerk thing to say, but I just wanted to push her toward her ghost and away from me. I just wanted to get away. This woman was like poison to me. "It's too late for that," she interrupted with a dry, harsh laugh. She sat up straight, her eyes suddenly sharp. "You're never home lately. Is there someone else?" Before I could speak, she grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "I can overlook the past. Just come back, and we'll make this marriage work for real." A cold chill ran on my spine. Images of my time with Hannah flashed through my mind. She was the one who pulled me out of the pit and accepted my messy past. The woman who once treated me like a tool was now looking at me with pleading eyes. This marriage had twisted into a mess of lies and lust. The rain hammered against the window, as if trying to wash it all away. We spent a surreal night in that room. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked loudly in the tense silence. I stared at Isabella's pale, tear-stained face. I dug my nails into my palms to stay focused. This woman was once my unreachable fantasy, but now she was a cage I was desperate to escape. "Isabella, it's over. We have to get a divorce." My voice trembled but held a new resolve. Her wine glass tilted and shattered on the floor. Red wine spread across the rug like an unhealed wound. She stumbled, catching herself on the table. "You're leaving me for another woman? Who is she? Is she richer than me? How much did she give you?" I let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Isabella, the world doesn't revolve around you. I accepted it when you wanted to play the tragic saint for your old flame. Now that I've found someone of my own, you want me back to play the good husband? I'm a human being, Isabella. I am not a placeholder you can use and discard." She lunged at me, the smell of alcohol overwhelming as she pressed her cold lips to my cheek. "Davis, I know you're mad because I never let you touch me. We can change that tonight. I'm still a virgin, Davis. I've never been with anyone. I can give you my first time." I turned my head away, a wave of nausea rising from my stomach. Something I once craved now felt cheap and dirty. "It's too late, Isabella. I don't love you anymore." Those words hit her like a physical blow. She began to shake, tears falling uncontrollably. "No, Davis, look at me. I'm your wife." The words came far too late. I pried her cold, iron-grip fingers off my shirt. "When you're sober, we'll talk about the divorce." I walked away, ignoring the sound of something else breaking behind me. For the next few days, Isabella seemed to vanish. I moved out of the apartment, but all my messages to her went unanswered. I knocked on the door, but there was only silence. Then one evening, As I was leaving my new place with Hannah, a black Porsche screeched to a halt beside us. Isabella jumped out, nearly tripping in her heels, her hair a mess. Her eyes locked onto our joined hands, turning red with rage. Hannah Miller, how could you seduce your own brother-in-law? The slap was so fast I barely saw it, leaving a red mark on Hannah's face. I instinctively pulled Hannah behind me, my own anger flaring up. Enough! Hannah didn't seduce me, so stop acting crazy. Not seduced, Isabella shrieked. Don't think I don't know how long you've been together behind my back. She waved our marriage certificate in Hannah's face. Legally, he's still my husband. A crowd began to gather, whispering about affairs and home wrecking. I could feel Hannah trembling behind me. I ripped off my tie and unbuttoned my collar, raising my voice so everyone could hear. Listen up. In our entire marriage, she never let me touch her once because she was saving herself for a man in London. We had a deal to live separate lives and divorce as soon as her old flame returned. We even signed a contract. The crowd gasped as they realized this wasn't a simple affair. Isabella's expression shifted to one of weakness, and she grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. Davis, I know I was wrong. Please come back. I'll do whatever you want. Isabella, what do you think he is? Hannah stepped out from behind me, her eyes blazing. A toy? You left him alone in an empty house for months, and now that he's finally moving on, you want him back? If you cared about him at all, you'd let him go. Isabella froze, her nails digging into her palms. I don't care. As long as I have this certificate, you're the mistress. If you want to sleep soundly, leave him. She turned and ran away, her heels clicking unevenly on the pavement. I knew then that she wouldn't let go without a fight. The wind blew, and the leaves rustled around us. Don't be afraid, I whispered to Hannah. I've already seen a lawyer. That agreement is clearly written, enough to prove that this marriage has long existed in name only. The worst case is waiting for a 2-year separation period, and the court will definitely grant the divorce. Even as I said it, a heavy uneasiness surged in my heart. As expected, when I went back to the apartment to get the agreement as evidence, it was gone. I turned the whole house upside down, checking every drawer and cabinet, even under the sofa. I couldn't find it anywhere. Isabella was leaning against the doorframe with a smug smile. Looking for something, honey? That agreement. Too bad. I think I accidentally burned it. Her look of triumph made me sick. I never thought she could be this shameless. Anger flared in my throat, and I couldn't stay there any longer. I stormed out, knowing that was the last time I'd ever step foot in that home. 3 days later, my mother-in-law called and told Hannah and me to come to the family estate in Lake Forest. She obviously knew everything. The mansion was thick with tension. In the formal reception room, the crystal chandeliers cast a cold light on everyone's faces. My father-in-law sat on the leather sofa in silence, a storm brewing in his eyes. My mother-in-law gripped her handkerchief, her knuckles white. Explain yourselves, my father-in-law said, his voice low and heavy. Isabella started crying on cue. Mom, Dad, look at him. He's with Hannah now. I try to keep this family together, and this is the betrayal I get. I held Hannah's arm to keep her calm. Sir, ma'am, it's not what it looks like. The real problem is Isabella. I kept my voice calm and clear. From the day we married, she only had eyes for her ex-boyfriend, Mason. Liar! Isabella screamed, her makeup a mess. I cut ties with Mason long ago. Really? I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots of her chat logs. Then what are these? She told him she only married me to get you off her back. She even swore to save herself for him. I couldn't even touch her hand. My mother-in-law gasped, dropping her handkerchief. My father-in-law's grip on his teacup tightened, veins popping on his hand. Isabella, is this true? She bit her lip and whispered that it was in the past. Mason is getting married now, and I want to live a good life with Davis. What's wrong with that? What's wrong? Hannah stood up, her eyes red. You treated your husband like a backup plan. He's a human being, not a placeholder you could just plug in when you're lonely. My father-in-law slammed his cup down, splashing tea everywhere. This is a disgrace. He looked back and forth between us. Isabella crawled to his side, begging for help. If Davis breaks up with Hannah, I'll be a good wife from now on. Her father fell into a deep, silent thought. When we left, Hannah's hand was ice cold. Davis, maybe we shouldn't be together, she whispered. I want you and my sister to be okay. After that, I saw Hannah less and less. I moved back to my old apartment, and Isabella started trying to play the role of a wife. We seemed like a normal couple. I didn't believe someone that obsessed could ever let go. One morning, while she was humming and doing her makeup, she stood in front of the mirror. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I caught a glimpse of the screen and immediately looked away, pretending I hadn't seen anything. My heart turned to ice. The name on the screen was Mason. This woman was still trapped in the past. She wasn't necessarily evil, just terrifyingly foolish. I knew the marriage had to end. Less than a week later, Isabella slammed a divorce agreement onto the table. She looked perfectly polished and cold. Her arrogant queen persona was back. Let's get a divorce, she said. I stared at her, wondering what game she was playing. What game is it this time? The game isn't fun anymore, she shrugged, her red nails tapping the paper. I know your heart is with Hannah. There's no point in pretending. She stood up, her skirt brushing my leg. Let's just say I'm bored of you. Looking at her arrogant face, my hand shook. I had cut off contact with Hannah, yet she was still messaging Mason while living with me. She was the one cheating, yet she was pinning everything on me. This was my chance. It was time to move toward my own future. Isabella, I'll give you one more chance. Let's make this work. Don't mention divorce again. I made sure to look pained. I dug my nails into my palms, reminding myself that this performance had to be convincing. I had gone over every step in my head. I want a divorce, she said coldly. She slammed her coffee cup on the table and told me it was non-negotiable. She tried to look calm, but the pulse in her neck gave her away. Why? I deserve a real reason. Fine, since you insist on knowing. She sneered. Mason isn't getting married. He's coming back soon, and I've realized he's the one I truly love. She was shameless, but her obsession was exactly what my plan needed. I immediately turned on my phone camera. Say that to the camera if you have the guts. She lifted her chin like a proud peacock. I, Isabella Miller, am formally and firmly divorcing Davis Carter. She spoke every word clearly. Don't regret it, I said, stepping closer so the microphone would catch my heavy breathing. I will never regret it, she said. Her arrogance was blinding. Fine, from now on, we're even. Don't ever step into my life again, I said slowly. I promise, she said excitedly to the camera. I'll never bother you again. Good, I said, stopping the recording. I'll sign. A month later, we were at the courthouse. The sound of the electronic pen on the screen was the only noise between us. I pointed to the $1 million compensation clause we had agreed on. Rules are rules, I said. Isabella signed without looking up. I'll have my assistant wire it to you. She stood up so quickly she knocked over a cup of coffee. The brown liquid soaked the divorce papers like a final, ironic seal on our relationship. Outside, an autumn leaf landed on her shoulder. We walked out of the building, each holding a copy of the divorce papers. She took off her sunglasses, the scent of Chanel filling the air. Congratulations on being single, she said with a thin smile. By the way, I think my sister still likes you. She hasn't dated anyone lately. Now you can finally be with her openly without the guilt. I guess I'll have to call you brother-in-law from now on. I wish you a long life together. Don't forget to invite me to the wedding. I'll bring a big gift. She got in her car, waved casually, and drove away without looking back. I watched her drive away, a smile slowly forming on my lips. My other phone buzzed with a message from Isabella, or rather my ex-wife. Mason, honey, it's done. I am divorced. I'm throwing you a huge party when you get back. Don't worry about work. I've saved a management spot for you. The messages kept coming. Of course, she wasn't messaging the real Mason. She was messaging the burner account I had set up. I had created a fake iMessage account with Mason's name and photo. A few weeks ago, I saw how obsessed she still was with him. I blocked the real Mason on her phone and replaced him with my fake account. I had my Mason tell her his engagement was off and he was coming back for her. She fell for it completely. With a little pushing, she was the one begging for the divorce. I just shook my head. She was still completely clueless. I sent a few more sweet messages from a Mason account to keep her in her fantasy. Then I sent a photo of the divorce certificate to Hannah. "I'm free. Still want me?" She replied instantly. "Poor thing. Bring your ID and get over here." I laughed. The sky was finally clearing. "You actually got divorced?" my former mother-in-law screamed. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll find a better son-in-law," Isabella said calmly. Isabella sat on the sofa, peeling an apple. She was wearing a new string of pearls. The better son-in-law she meant was, of course, Mason. She was still lost in the dream I built for her. Hannah squeezed my arm and showed me her ID. I knew what she meant. We were going to get married right now. Her eyes crinkled just like they did the night we met, full of that playful spark. Looking at her parents' shocked, red faces, I took a deep breath and gripped Hannah's hand. "Sir, ma'am, at least I don't have to learn new names for my in-laws. I want to marry Hannah." They looked like they were about to faint. The final blow came from my ex-wife. "Dad, Mom, don't be so old-fashioned," Isabella said. "Davis and my sister are in love. We should bless them." Her parents deflated like pop balloons. If their eldest daughter didn't care, how could they object? Their anger turned into a helpless sigh. The wedding march began to play in the hall. I walked Hannah down the aisle. Her white dress sparkled under the lights, matching the joy in her eyes. The guests erupted in applause, but my gaze fell on Isabella. She was wearing a black dress, standing out in the crowd. She was tracing the rim of her glass, looking like a dark cloud in the middle of the celebration. "Don't look at her," Hannah whispered, gripping my hand. "Today is our day." Later, at the reception, we walked over to her table. Isabella slammed her glass down, splashing red wine everywhere. "Nice job, you too," she hissed, her voice cutting through the music. "You actually pretended to be Mason to trick me into a divorce. You had to play such a dirty game to be together." The truth had finally reached her. The real Mason had returned to the U.S. with his new wife a few days ago. He had even invited Isabella to their homecoming party. I heard she trashed her room after finding out. Our table went silent, and the people around us stopped to watch. Hannah was about to speak, but I stopped her and pulled out my phone. "Isabella, you can blame me for a lot of things, but you can't change the facts." She stood up, her dress catching on a plate as the silverware clattered. "Who else could it be? The real Mason never contacted me. You used a fake account to trick me into thinking he was coming back for me. You pushed me to divorce my husband. I waited for him for a month, and all I got was a wedding invitation." I couldn't help but smile. Hannah was shaking with suppressed laughter. "Want to see this first?" I asked, playing the video. Her arrogant voice filled the room. "I, Isabella Miller, am formally and firmly divorcing Davis Carter." Her voice was clear and full of certainty. "I will never regret it." The woman in the video was a sharp contrast to the one standing here, shaking. The crowd began to whisper. Isabella's face turned bright red. "You planned all of this." "Planned? Who was the one who said they'd never bother me again?" It was the woman messaging her ex while begging me for a divorce. I leaned in and whispered, "Should I read those messages back to you? I have every single one you sent to the fake account saved." She tried to have everything and ended up with nothing. Isabella shook, her wine glass shattering on the floor. She stared at the screen, at the woman who threw everything away for a ghost. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Hannah gripped my arm and spoke firmly. "Isabella, marriage isn't a waiting room. You can't just use someone to hold your spot while you wait for someone else. You pushed him away yourself. Why try to ruin this now? I seem to remember you were the one who told Mom and Dad to bless us. You said we were in love. Did you forget so soon?" Those memories hit her like a boomerang. Isabella looked up with red eyes, but she couldn't even cry. She just stood there with her remaining pride. I put my phone away. "Isabella, this was your choice. I gave you a chance." I turned away, and Hannah gripped my hand. Her warmth chased away the last of the shadows. The band started playing again, and the cheers of our friends drowned out the silence at Isabella's table. I looked at Hannah, and her face was full of joy. In that moment, I realized the schemes and the anger didn't matter anymore. In this messy drama, I found my own happiness. That was enough to make me the winner. Being a side character in someone else's script will never earn you applause. This story's clarity comes from the fact that the protagonist didn't wallow in victimhood. He saw the truth about marriage. When someone treats you as a placeholder, your devotion is just a cheap bargaining chip. This scheme was a desperate act of self-salvage. If a relationship requires you to turn bad to be free, it wasn't worth keeping. Don't be afraid to be the villain in their eyes. Happiness built on ruins is far more dignified than withering in silence. Have a strength to live for yourself and not for someone else's obsession.